The rhythmic beat of hooves against the soft earth had always brought Lyra peace. Out here on the vast plains of Novoterra, with the twin moons beginning their ascent in the lavender sky, she could almost forget the weight of her responsibilities as a warden. The mechanical horse beneath her, Kel, moved with a fluidity that belied his artificial nature. Only the faint blue glow emanating from beneath his synthetic skin, visible in the gathering dusk, revealed his true composition. Lyra leaned forward, her blue fingers threading through Kel's mane-like energy field, feeling the familiar tingle against her skin. The markings on her arms, intricate patterns that told the story of her lineage, seemed to pulse in response. "Just a little farther," she whispered, though she knew Kel understood her intent more than her words. This monthly ride to the edge of the Boundary Hills was her ritual, her small rebellion. The elders, particularly Thora, would not approve of how close she ventured to the forbidden territories, but the pull of the unknown was too strong to resist. The plains stretched out before her, the native purple grass swaying in the evening breeze. In the distance, the Boundary Hills rose like sentinels, their unusual formations, spiraling columns of stone that seemed to defy gravity, silhouetted against the darkening sky. Beyond them lay the territories her people had declared forbidden generations ago, when they had chosen isolation over engagement with the wider galaxy. Kel suddenly stopped, his ears, designed to mimic those of the earth horses of ancient legend, pricking forward. Lyra felt the change in his posture, the subtle tensing of his mechanical muscles. "What is it?" she asked, scanning the horizon. That's when she saw it. A streak of fire cutting across the twilight sky, leaving a trail of smoke and debris in its wake. Not a meteor. The trajectory was too controlled, too deliberate, until it wasn't. The object began to tumble, spinning wildly as it descended toward the Boundary Hills. "Stars above," Lyra breathed as the object, clearly a ship of some kind, disappeared behind the hills. A moment later, the ground trembled beneath them as a distant boom echoed across the plains. Kel shifted uneasily, the blue circuits beneath his skin pulsing more rapidly. Lyra's heart raced. In all her 28 cycles, she had never witnessed anything like this. The isolation protocols were clear. No contact with outsiders, no technology beyond what the tribe deemed necessary, and absolutely no crossing the Boundary Hills. Yet someone had just crashed beyond them. Someone who might need help. "We should go back," she said aloud, though her eyes remained fixed on the plume of dark smoke now rising from behind the hills. "Alert the council." Kel whinnied softly, a sound programmed to convey understanding, but he didn't turn back. Instead, he remained facing the hills, as if waiting for her true decision. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the weight of generations of tradition pressing against her curiosity. Elder Thora's warnings echoed in her mind. The outside world drove us from Earth. We found peace only in isolation. But what if someone was dying while she debated tribal law? "This goes against everything, you know," she told Kel, even as she nudged him forward with her knees. "If Thora finds out, she'll have my position as warden." Kel's response was to break into a gallop toward the hills, his mechanical legs eating up the distance with efficient grace. The wind whipped through Lyra's blonde hair as they rode, her decision made. As they crested the first of the boundary markers, stone pillars etched with warnings in the old language, Lyra felt a shiver of transgression. No one in her generation had crossed this line. She was breaking the most sacred law of her people. The smoke guided them through the twisting paths of the hills. The landscape here was different, sharper, less tamed. Plants she didn't recognize clung to the rocky soil, and the air carried unfamiliar scents. When they finally reached the crash site, Lyra pulled Kel to a halt, staring in wonder and apprehension. The ship was unlike anything in the tribal archives she had access to, sleek and angular, with markings she couldn't decipher. One wing had been completely sheared off, and the hull was breached in multiple places, revealing sparking circuitry within. "Hello?" she called out, her voice sounding small in the vastness of the hills. "Is anyone alive?" Sliding from Kel's back, she approached cautiously, her hand instinctively moving to the ceremonial knife at her belt, more a tool than a weapon, but comforting nonetheless. The ground around the ship was scorched, small fires still burning in patches of dry grass. A movement caught her eye. A hatch on the side of the ship sliding open with a hydraulic hiss. Lyra froze, her blue fingers tightening around the knife handle. A figure emerged, stumbling from the opening before collapsing to the ground. Even from a distance, Lyra could see this was no member of her tribe. The skin was pale, not the vibrant blue of her people, and the flight suit was of a design she had never seen. A human. It had to be. The ancient enemy, according to tribal lore. The figure tried to rise, failed, then looked up. Their eyes met across the crash site, blue eyes meeting brown, and Lyra felt something shift in the world around her. This was the moment her life would change forever, the moment her people had feared for generations. The human, a male, she realized, reached out a hand toward her, his lips forming words she couldn't hear over the crackling of fires and the ringing in her ears. Then his arm dropped, and he slumped to the ground, motionless. Lyra stood at the precipice of decision. Turn back now, alert the elders, and let them handle this intrusion as tribal law dictated. Or step forward into the unknown, breaking centuries of tradition. Kel nudged her back gently, pushing her forward a step. "I know," she whispered. "We can't just leave him." With a deep breath, Lyra crossed the scorched earth toward the fallen human, her bare feet careful on the hot ground. As she knelt beside him, she saw the blood seeping through his flight suit, the unnatural angle of one leg, the burns on his exposed skin. "Can you hear me?" she asked, knowing he probably wouldn't understand her language. To her surprise, his eyes fluttered open, focusing on her with difficulty. "Help," he said, the words strangely accented but unmistakable. Then, "Marcus, Commander Marcus Reed." Lyra's breath caught. He spoke the old tongue, the language of Earth that was preserved only in their most sacred texts. How was that possible? "I'm Lyra," she replied hesitantly in the same language, the words feeling strange on her tongue. "Lyra Naveen." A ghost of a smile crossed his pained face. "Blue," he whispered, reaching toward her face but dropping his hand before making contact. "They said you might be blue." Then his eyes rolled back, and he lost consciousness again. Lyra looked back at Kel, then at the smoking ship, then down at the injured human. Marcus. The sun had nearly set now, casting long shadows across the crash site. Soon, the night predators would be drawn to the smell of blood and burning. "We need to get him back to the valley," she said to Kel, who trotted closer. "But the elders—" She shook her head. There was no time for debate. This human, this Marcus Reed, needed medical attention, And more importantly, his words suggested something impossible, that humans knew of her people's existence, despite generations of careful isolation. With determination, Lyra began the difficult task of lifting the unconscious man onto Kel's back. The mechanical horse adjusted his posture to make it easier, lowering himself to the ground. "This changes everything," Lyra murmured as she secured Marcus across Kel's back before mounting behind him. "The elders can't ignore this. They'll have to tell us the truth now." As they started the journey back toward the valley, a journey that would irrevocably alter the course of her life and possibly her entire people, Lyra cast one last glance at the crashed ship. Something glinted in the fading light, catching her attention. A symbol on the hull she hadn't noticed before. A symbol she recognized from the secret archives she wasn't supposed to access. The ancient emblem of Earth. Commander Marcus Reed drifted in and out of consciousness, fragments of memory mixing with present sensation. The mission briefing. The unexpected attack. The desperate jump to escape. And now, pain, sharp and insistent, punctuated by glimpses of a face that couldn't be real. Blue skin, blonde hair, concerned eyes. When he finally regained full consciousness, he found himself in a circular room unlike any he had seen before. The walls appeared to be made of living wood, curved and flowing in impossible patterns. Soft light emanated from glowing orbs suspended from the ceiling. And sitting beside the bed, if the moss-covered platform he lay on could be called that, was the blue-skinned woman. "You're awake," she said in halting English, studying him with a mixture of wariness and curiosity. Marcus tried to sit up, wincing as pain shot through his ribs. "Where am I?" he managed to ask. "Hidden Valley. My home." She gestured around them. "You are injured. I brought you here." Marcus took stock of his condition. His flight suit had been removed, replaced with loose garments of a material he didn't recognize. His leg, which he distinctly remembered being broken, was encased in some kind of translucent casing that pulsed with gentle light. "Thank you," he said, then added with growing urgency, "My ship. I need to—" "Your ship is beyond the boundary," she interrupted. "No one goes there. It is forbidden. But I need to send a message. It's important. There's danger." The door to the room, a seamless part of the wall until it simply wasn't, slid open, revealing an older blue-skinned woman. Her face was more heavily marked than Lyra's, with intricate patterns extending from her cheeks up to her temples. Her expression was severe. "Lyra Naveen," the newcomer said in a language Marcus didn't understand. "The council demands your presence. And the outsiders, if he can stand." Lyra rose, her posture stiffening. "Elder Thora, he's barely conscious. Surely the council can wait until—" "Now, Warden. You have broken our most sacred law. The consequences cannot wait on the outsider's comfort." Marcus watched the exchange, understanding none of the words, but all of the tension. When Thora left, Lyra turned back to him with a troubled expression. "Can you walk?" she asked in English. "The elders wish to see you." "I think so," Marcus replied, carefully swinging his legs over the edge of the bed. The translucent casing on his legs seemed to adjust as he moved, supporting without restricting. "What's happening? Who are you people?" Lyra hesitated, then offered her hand to help him stand. "We are the Starfallen, the ones who left Earth when humanity chose violence over peace. At least, that's what our histories tell us." Marcus stared at her, recognition dawning. The Exodus colony? But that was over 200 years ago. They were believed lost. Not lost, Lyra corrected as she steadied him. Hidden. By choice. As they made their way through corridors that seemed grown rather than built, Marcus took in his surroundings with increasing amazement. What had appeared primitive at first glance revealed itself as technology so advanced it was nearly indistinguishable from nature. Doors opened with a thought. Light responded to presence. And everywhere, the blue-skinned people, the descendants of the legendary Exodus scientists, watched him with expressions ranging from fear to fascination. Your people, Marcus said quietly to Lyra. The genetic modifications were supposed to be temporary, to help survive the journey. They became part of us, she replied, a reminder of our difference, our choice to be other than human. They emerged into a vast chamber where a semicircle of elders sat on elevated platforms. At the center was Thora, her expression unreadable. The chamber fell silent as Marcus and Lyra entered. Lyra Naveen, Thora began in the language of the Starfallen, then switched to perfect, unaccented English, clearly for Marcus's benefit. You have brought an outsider into our sanctuary. Explain yourself. Lyra straightened, her chin lifting. He would have died, Elder. His ship crashed beyond the boundary. Our laws value life above all else. Our laws also demand isolation, another elder countered, for the protection of all. Marcus stepped forward, ignoring the pain that shot through his leg. If I may speak, he said, addressing the council. I didn't come here intentionally. My ship was damaged in an attack. But now that I'm here, I need to warn you. All of you. Thora's eyes narrowed. Warn us of what, outsider? The Scourge, a species we encountered 10 years ago in the Proxima system. They've been moving through this sector, stripping planets of resources and destroying any civilization they encounter. Marcus paused, looking around at the skeptical faces. They're methodical, unstoppable so far. And according to my ship's last calculations before the crash, they're heading directly for this system. A murmur ran through the chamber. Thora raised a hand for silence. Convenient, she said coldly, that after 2 centuries of successful isolation, we should suddenly need the protection of Earth forces. I'm not asking you to trust Earth, Marcus replied. I'm asking you to verify my information. Check my ship's data cores. They contain everything we know about the Scourge. Lyra stepped forward. I can retrieve the data. I know where the ship is. You've done enough, Warden, Thora said sharply. Guards will be sent to secure the crash site and destroy any evidence of our location. Destroy? Marcus exclaimed. That ship contains vital information, not just about the Scourge, but navigation data that could help evacuate this planet if necessary. We do not need your evacuation, another elder stated. Our ancestors chose this world precisely because it can be hidden. Our shield technology that hasn't been tested against an enemy in 200 years, Lyra interrupted. Technology that even our best engineers only partially understand because we've turned our backs on our heritage. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Thora stood, her authority immediately silencing the room. Lyra Naveen, you forget yourself. Our isolation has protected us for generations. This human, she gestured dismissively at Marcus, represents the very reason our ancestors fled Earth. Violence, conflict, the constant search for enemies. With respect, Elder, Lyra replied, her voice steady despite the tension visible in her posture. I believe we should at least examine his evidence before dismissing the threat. Thora studied Lyra for a long moment, then turned her gaze to Marcus. The council will deliberate. Until then, the human will remain under guard. Lyra, as the one who broke our laws, you will be responsible for him. As they were led from the chamber, Marcus leaned closer to Lyra. They're not going to help, are they? Lyra's expression was grim. The elders fear change more than anything, but they don't speak for all of us. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, Lyra said quietly, that we might need to break a few more laws before this is over. Night had fallen over the hidden valley, the bioluminescent plants that lined the pathways casting an ethereal glow over the settlement. Lyra led Marcus through less traveled routes, avoiding the curious stares of her people. Kel followed behind them, his mechanical hooves nearly silent on the soft ground. Where are we going? Marcus asked, his legs still painful despite the advanced healing technology the Starfallen had applied. The archives, Lyra replied, glancing back to ensure they weren't followed. If I'm going to help you, I need to understand what we're truly facing, both from these scourge creatures and from my own people. They approached what appeared to be a living hill, covered in the same flowing vegetation that adorned most structures in the valley. Lyra placed her palm against a particular configuration of plants, and a doorway silently appeared. Few come here, she explained as they entered. The elders discourage too much interest in our past. Inside, the archive revealed itself as a vast chamber that extended deep underground. Unlike the organic appearance of the buildings above, here the technology was more apparent. Data terminals with flowing light interfaces, storage units humming with energy, and at the center, a holographic projection of what Marcus recognized as their star system. This is incredible, he breathed. Your people maintained this level of technology while appearing primitive from the outside. The appearance of simplicity was deliberate, Lyra said, moving to one of the terminals. Our ancestors believed that by mimicking natural forms, by integrating technology with organic design, they could avoid the pitfalls that led humanity to crisis on Earth. Her fingers danced over the light interface, bringing up historical records. Images of Earth appeared, cities, conflicts, the environmental collapse that had threatened the planet 2 centuries earlier. Here, she said, pointing to footage of the Exodus launch, the last record we have of direct contact with Earth. 50 scientists and their families, departing to establish a research colony. But according to our histories, they discovered something that made them choose permanent isolation instead. Marcus studied the footage, recognition dawning. That's not how we tell the story. In our history, the Exodus colony was a desperate attempt to preserve human knowledge during the resource wars. They were heroes, not refugees. When contact was lost, it was mourned as a tragedy. Then why were you looking for us? Lyra asked sharply. Your words when I found you, they said you might be blue. You knew what to expect. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. About 20 years ago, an old Earth probe sent back unusual readings from this sector, genetic markers that matched the Exodus modifications. There's been a debate about whether to investigate. A debate, Lyra repeated flatly, about whether to violate our isolation. About whether you needed help, Marcus corrected. The universe has changed, Lyra. Earth recovered. The solar coalition formed. We've encountered other species, some peaceful, some not. When the scourge appeared, we began reaching out to all potential human colonies, warning them. Lyra turned back to the terminal, bringing up different records. If what you say is true, then why does our history insist that humanity was a threat? Why did our ancestors choose to hide rather than maintain contact? Before Marcus could answer, a new image appeared on the screen, a ship design that made him stiffen in recognition. "That's a scourge vessel," he said, moving closer despite his pain. "How do you have records of them from 200 years ago?" Lyra stared at the image, then at the accompanying text. "This can't be right. According to this, the Exodus scientists encountered these beings near Proxima Centauri. They were the reason our ancestors changed course, came to this system instead. The Scourge weren't discovered by Earth forces until 10 years ago," Marcus said, confusion evident in his voice. "Unless—" Lyra's fingers moved rapidly over the interface, bringing up more sealed records. "Unless Earth didn't know. Look at this, communications from the Exodus leader to Earth, never sent. They discovered the Scourge harvesting a planet in the Proxima system. They observed, gathered data, then fled to this system, which their scans showed could be hidden using the unusual radiation from our star." Marcus read the translated text with growing alarm. "They knew. 200 years ago, your ancestors knew about the Scourge, and instead of warning Earth, they hid," Lyra finished, her voice hollow. "They chose to protect themselves and let Earth face the threat uninformed. The revelation hung between them, reshaping everything Lyra had been taught about her people's history. Not refugees from human violence, but scientists who had made a calculated decision to save themselves at the potential expense of the civilization they'd left behind." "We need to get to your ship," Lyra said suddenly, her decision made. "If the Scourge are coming here, we need your data, and we need to warn the Coalition." "The Elders won't allow it," Marcus reminded her. Lyra turned to Kel, who had been standing silently near the entrance. "Then we won't ask permission." She placed her hand on the mechanical horse's neck, the circuits beneath his synthetic skin pulsing in response to her touch. "Kel can get us past the boundary guards, but we'll need to move quickly before dawn." As they prepared to leave the archive, Marcus caught her arm gently. "Why are you helping me? This goes against everything your people believe." Lyra met his gaze steadily. "Because isolation was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to protect us until we were ready to face the universe again." She glanced at the historical records still displayed on the screen. "I think that time has come, whether we're ready or not." The journey back to the crash site was tense, with Lyra constantly scanning for boundary patrols. Kel carried them both, his mechanical systems operating at peak efficiency despite the double burden. The moons cast enough light to navigate by, but also enough to be seen if anyone was watching. "There," Marcus said, as they crested a rise in the boundary hills. His ship lay below, looking even more damaged than Lyra remembered. "If the main computer core is intact, we can retrieve the Scourge data." They approached cautiously. No guards had been posted yet, the council likely still deliberating, but Lyra knew that wouldn't last. Dawn was only a few hours away. Inside the ship, emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow over the twisted metal. Marcus moved with purpose despite his injury, making his way to what remained of the control center. "The core is designed to survive crashes," he explained as he worked to access a panel beneath the main console. "Standard protocol for scout ships in unknown territory." Lyra watched in fascination as he extracted a small device from the ship's systems. "This contains everything? All your knowledge of the Scourge? And navigational data, communication protocols, everything we'd need to contact the Coalition." He pocketed the device, then turned to another system. "But first, Let me show you what we're facing. The ship's auxiliary display flickered to life, showing images that made Lyra's blood run cold. Massive ships, organic in appearance but clearly artificial, surrounded a planet that glowed red with heat as it was systematically stripped of resources. Smaller vessels swarmed like insects, harvesting materials and eliminating resistance. This was Proxima 4, Marcus said quietly. A colony of 3 million. By the time coalition forces arrived, there was nothing left but a hollowed shell. Lyra stared at the footage, understanding now why her ancestors had chosen to hide. How do you fight something like this? Alone? You don't. That's why the coalition formed, combining the resources and knowledge of every human settlement and allied species. Marcus turned to her, his expression grave. Your people's shield technology might hide you for a while. But if the Scourge are systematically searching this sector, they'll find Novoterra eventually. A sound from outside interrupted them. The distinctive hum of the tribal guards' hover discs. The council had made its decision. We need to go, Lyra said urgently. If they catch us here... Too late, came Elder Thora's voice from the ship's breached hull. She stood framed in the opening, flanked by guards. I knew you would return to the outsider's ship, Lyra. Your curiosity was always your weakness. Lyra stepped forward, placing herself between Marcus and the guards. Elder, please. You need to see what we've found. The threat is real, and our ancestors knew about it. They abandoned Earth to its fate, Thora finished for her. Yes, I know. I am keeper of the archives, child. Did you think those records were unknown to me? Marcus moved to stand beside Lyra. Then you know we need to warn the coalition. Your people's knowledge, combined with what we've learned in the past decade, might be the key to defeating the Scourge. Thora's expression remained impassive. The council has voted. The outsider's ship will be destroyed, all evidence of our existence erased. Our shields will protect us, as they have for generations. And if they fail? Lyra challenged. If the Scourge find us anyway? What then, Elder? Then we will face our fate with dignity, Thora replied, as our ancestors intended. A commotion from outside drew their attention. One of the guards rushed in, his expression alarmed. Elder! Something approaches from the sky. Multiple objects, moving fast. Marcus's face paled. How many? What configuration? The guard looked to Thora for permission before answering. 7 craft, moving in formation. Not like his ship. Larger. Scout formation, Marcus said grimly. The Scourge found this system faster than we anticipated. They must have followed my ship's energy trail. Thora's composure finally cracked, fear showing in her eyes. Impossible. Our shields won't hide the crash site, Lyra realized. The energy signature, the debris pattern, it's a beacon pointing directly at us. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Thora straightened, her authority reasserting itself. We evacuate to the deep shelters. Now. Guards, destroy this ship. No. Marcus and Lyra protested simultaneously. Marcus held up the data core. This contains communication protocols that could call coalition forces. They have ships in nearby systems, ships with weapons designed to fight the Scourge. And how long would these forces take to arrive? Thora demanded. Hours, maybe, if we're lucky. Lyra turned to Kel, an idea forming. The mechanical horses, they have transmission capabilities. Our ancestors designed them to maintain contact across the colony before isolation was decided. Theoretical capabilities, Thora corrected. Never used in our lifetime. But possible, Lyra insisted. She placed her hand on Kel's neck, feeling the complex systems beneath. Kel contains parts from the original Earth expedition. If we could boost his signal using the ship's remaining power. Marcus caught on immediately. We could create a tight beam transmission, directional, focused, less likely to be detected by the Scourge. Thora hesitated, centuries of isolation weighing against immediate threat. Finally, she nodded. Do it, quickly. The rest of us will prepare the valley for possible evacuation. As Thora and the guards departed, Lyra and Marcus worked frantically to connect Kel's systems to the ship's power source. The mechanical horse stood perfectly still, his circuits glowing brighter as the connection was established. Will this hurt him? Marcus asked, noting Lyra's concerned expression as she worked. I don't know, she admitted. The horses aren't just machines. They're part of us. Kel has been with my family for generations. Marcus paused, looking at the magnificent creation with new appreciation. Your people's technology, it's unlike anything I've seen. This blend of mechanical and organic. It was our answer to the coldness of pure technology, Lyra explained, making final adjustments. Now, we need the coalition coordinates from your data core. Marcus provided the information, and together they programmed the transmission, a distress call containing their location, the approaching Scourge vessels, and a compressed packet of Marcus's data on Scourge weaknesses. Ready? Lyra asked, her hand hovering over the final connection. Marcus nodded. Send it. Lyra completed the circuit. Kel's entire form tensed, the blue glow of his circuits intensifying to a brilliant white. A high-pitched whine filled the ship as energy surged through the improvised transmitter. Come on, Lyra whispered, her hand resting on Kel's neck. You can do this. The mechanical horse's eyes, designed to mimic those of Earth horses but containing complex sensory equipment, flared with light. For 30 seconds that felt like an eternity, the transmission continued, Kel's systems straining under the load. Then, abruptly, the light dimmed. Kel staggered, his legs buckling slightly before he regained his balance. Did it work? Lyra asked anxiously, checking her companion for damage. Marcus was already at the ship's remaining sensors. Signal sent. Clean transmission. Now we wait, and hope someone was listening. A distant rumble shook the ground. Through the breached hull, they could see new lights in the sky. The approaching Scourge scouts, their organic mechanical forms now visible as they descended toward the planet. We need to get back to the valley, Lyra said, helping Marcus gather what useful technology remained from the ship. If the shields hold, we might have a chance. As they mounted Kel, the mechanical horse moving more slowly now, but still determined, Marcus looked back at his ruined ship. I'm sorry I brought this to your world. Lyra's expression was solemn but resolute. Perhaps it was always coming. Perhaps this is why we were meant to remember our past, not just hide from it. They rode toward the hidden valley, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. Behind them, the Scourge vessels descended toward the crash site, their search pattern expanding outward. Ahead, the future of two peoples hung in the balance, separated by centuries of isolation, but now facing a common threat. As they crested the final hill before the valley, Lyra paused, looking back at the ships now landing near Marcus's crash site. Whatever happens, she said quietly, isolation ends today. Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of that statement. Together, then. Together, Lyra agreed, nudging Kel forward as the new day dawned on a world forever changed by a single crashed ship and the unexpected connection between two different worlds.